All right, Algebra 2. Let's look at example 1 in 4.4. And again, 4.4, if you felt pretty comfortable factoring in 4.3, 4.4, especially if you did the snowflake method reasonably well, then it should be pretty straightforward. So again, what we're trying to do is factor this trinomial. So the very first thing that we want to think about is, can we factor anything out of these three terms right here? Is there a common factor between 3, 10, and 8? And there's not here. So we're going to go ahead and try to factor this trinomial with two parentheses, or the product of two binomials. Now we're going to go ahead and use the snowflake method to figure out the terms that are inside here. So with the snowflake method, we're going to simply make that graphic with a horizontal line and then kind of a cross. And remember, this is just setting up our terms. Right here, we're going to put the a value on the left and right hand side. So the a value here is no longer just 1, it's 3. So we're going to go ahead and put a 3 here and a 3 here. Now on the top, we're always going to put a times c. So in 4.3, a was always equal to 1, so it always was just whatever that number was on top, but now it's going to change. We have to take 3 times 8, which is 24, and so up here I'm going to have 24 now. And then on the bottom, the same thing, we're going to take the b value. In this case, the b value is negative 10. So we'll have negative 10. Then the process is exactly the same on the next step. We're just going to think about, okay, I have to think about two numbers that multiply up to 24, but also add up to negative 10. So we think about our combinations for 24. What multiplies up to 24? Well, 6 times 4, 8 times 3, 12 times 2, 24 times 1. And you think about what has the possibility of adding up to 10, right, or negative 10, and that's only going to be 6 times 4, right? And since it adds up to negative 10, both of these are going to be negative, right? So this still works. Negative 6 times negative 4 is still positive 24, and negative 6 plus negative 4 is negative 10. So this works. And now I'm certain that this problem is going to be factorable. All I have to do is put it into the parentheses, but there's one last step we're going to do here that we did not do in 4.3, but which is a very easy step. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at these two columns right here, and if any of these columns can be factored, then you're going to factor them. Or sorry, not factor. If you can reduce any of these columns, then you're going to reduce them. So think of this as a fraction. Even though it's really not a fraction, think of it as a fraction. 3 divided by negative 4, that would be considered a reduced fraction already. So that one's already done. But if you go to the other column, or fraction if you want to think about it like that, you could reduce this fraction, 3 over negative 6, because they both could be divided by 3. So if I divided both by 3, divide this by 3, divide this by 3, then this would become a 1, and this would become a negative 2. Now, this is the factored one right here. So we're not gonna look at this unfactored column. We're now going to look at this reduced fraction, I should say. And then those are now the numbers that go in the parentheses. So we have 1 over negative 2, that's going to be 1x minus 2. And we have 3 and negative 4, that's going to be 3x minus 4. And that's going to be our answer. If we wanted to double check this, we could multiply all this out, and we could make sure that this is the correct factoring. Let's go ahead and do that in this case. So 1x times 3x, that's 3x squared. And then the outside terms would be 1x times negative 4, it's negative 4x, plus the inside product is negative 6x, and then times the last terms here, which is -2 times -4, which is +8. And you can see here that this is going to become -10x, and my first and last term are the same, and this matches up with what I have here. So the correct answer is this x minus 2 times 3x minus 4. All right, so here's a couple more problems. Why don't you go ahead and practice these? These are actually your some problems on your homework as well. So here's B and C. Pause the video and give it a try. Okay, so if we're going to factor any of these, we're first going to see, can I factor anything out first? And you can't factor anything out, so we're going to go to the 2 parentheses and try to break it up like this. And we're going to use the snowflake method down here. So here's snowflake. We're going to put my A values right here, so 4 and 4. And the top value, we're going to take A times C, which is -24, and then the bottom is 5. So we have to think about what multiplies up to -24, what multiplies up to this and adds up to this. So we have 6 and 4, that's not going to do it. 8 and 3, 8 times 3 is 24. And I want to add up to 5, so I'm going to take 8, and I'm going to have a -3 here, because 8 plus -3 is +5, and 8 times -3 is -24. So now I have my things here, and I think about these columns as fractions for the time being, and this one looks like it's already like a reduced fraction, but this one over here is not reduced, so I'm going to change this 4/8. I'm going to change that to 1/2. So that's now reduced, and now I can circle that column. There's my reduced column, and so that's my answer. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the parentheses. I have 1 and a 2, so that's going to be a 1x plus 2, and over here I have a 4 and a -3, so a 4x minus 3, and there's my answer for this one. All right, so let's look at C. Again, you can't factor anything out of this, so I'm going to go straight to my 2 parentheses. And snowflake method. Now, if you want to do any of these things, if some of you are doing like more of the traditional method where you're doing more of a guess and check and not using the structure of the snowflake to figure this out, and you're just kind of guessing and checking, that's okay too. That's kind of how I do it. You would say 2x and x, and then think about, well, what multiplies up to 15, and start putting those numbers in, and then start kind of guessing and checking and seeing if that works, which I think that is the answer, but let's go back. Snowflake method, the A value is 2 and 2 here, and then the A times C value on the top is 30, so this is 30. And the bottom value is 11, and think about what multiplies up to 30 and adds up to 11. So 5 times 6. So we have 5 times 6 is 30, and 5 plus 6 is 11. Now we want to take my columns. Here's my one column that's already a reduced column. This one over here is not reduced because 2, 6 would reduce down to 1/3. And so my reduced column is now this, and then those circled columns are my answers. So 2x plus 5 is right here, and then 1x plus 3 is right here. So we can always double check that by multiplying this out. What I always do is, if I just look at the outside plus inside, I just make sure that adds up to 11 if I want to double check, right? 2x times 3, well, that's 6x. And the middle term is 5 times 1x, so that's 5x. And yes, those do add up to 11x, so I'm pretty confident that is the right answer. And that's what you should have gotten for C.